Hey everyone, this is Ryan from Badgerland Birding, back with another birding hotspot review. Today we are going to Ohio and we're going to talk about Howard Marsh Metro Park. So we were at the biggest week in American birding in northern Ohio. We did visit Howard Marsh Metro Park a couple of times and had some pretty good success birding there. So we'll talk about the habitat first. Howard Marsh is a cattail marsh, so it's very similar to some of the other marshes in the Midwest, most notably Horicon Marsh. It kind of gave me small Horicon Marsh vibes, and the way they have it laid out is pretty interesting. There's actually two halves to it. So there's the western half, which is on obviously the western side of the road that cuts through it, and then also the eastern half, which as you can guess is on the east. The western half is a bit smaller. There's a parking lot, and then you can kind of walk around the whole thing, and it also has a boardwalk that takes you sort of out in the middle of the marsh, at least on one side kind of edging the marsh where you can get some good looks at things. And then I would say what I would describe as maybe the better side, or at least the bigger side of the marsh, is the eastern side. And that seemed to be where a lot of the interesting species were. There's a parking lot right in the middle of it that you drive into, and then you can kind of expand out different directions. There are also a few boardwalks on that side too, and boardwalks are a cool thing to have in a marsh, especially. It gets you up elevated over the water. It kind of gives you a unique look at the habitat that you wouldn't get otherwise. So let's talk signature species. A lot of those freshwater marsh species are going to be what you are looking for at Howard Marsh Metro Park. Blackneck stilts nest there. That's a pretty cool species that's becoming more common in the Midwest, but for a long time was pretty rare in that area. Then also least bittern, yellow-headed blackbird was a major draw there. When we were there, they were pretty few and far between, but other times I've heard they're really thick at Howard Marsh and actually will be in the parking lot even. So that's a pretty cool species. Migratory shorebirds, dunlin, phalaropes, pretty much anything that you can think of that would be a cattail bird or a shorebird that's going to be passing through the region is going to be something you're going to want to look for there. Some of the other species to look for here too are different waterfowl species. We saw trumpeter swans there. I imagine in fall and early spring a lot of stuff passes through, so definitely worth keeping an eye out for waterfowl, keeping an eye out for rails, gallinules, all of that fun marsh stuff that likes the freshwater cattail marshes. Now when we were there it was springtime in May. So I don't know exactly what it's like in the winter time, but I'm imagining that usually spring and summer are going to be your best bets to go for Howard Marsh Metro Park. So let's talk accessibility. Everything is pretty flat, everything's pretty easy to walk on. If you were in a wheelchair, you could definitely still go through everything. Some of the trails are gravel, so if you have any issues with walking or anything on gravel, then you might have some problem. But in terms of inclines, there's not much. In terms of grades, it's pretty flat. And then there is no fee to enter the Metro Park too, which is always really nice to not have to worry about paying a fee. And now we get to the questions. Is Howard Marsh Metro Park iconic? It's definitely not iconic yet. I could see it at some point being one of those iconic places for people that visit the biggest week in American birding, because it is a big draw for people that are in town during that time. And then would you center a trip around this Metro Park? I would say no, but it is a really convenient place to have around for biggest week in American birding. So if you are in the area, especially if it's spring and summer, I would definitely give it a look. For Howard Marsh, it's a pretty small cattail marsh, has some cool species. I would probably give it a 6.7 out of 10. 6.7 out of 10 for Howard Marsh Metro Park.